What is going on, Bulls Nation? Welcome in to an emergency episode of the CHGO Bulls Podcast. Coming to you remote because crazy things happened today. I'm Pat Kick. Follow me on Twitter at Bulls_Pack, joined by my guys all around. Mark K. MK Hoops on the top shelf with me. Hanging out in the basement, we got Big Dave Watson, bow, BWL Sports, and Will the GOAT. Perfectly coiffed Gottlieb, Will_Gottlieb. We are CHU_Bulls. Our pal and producer, Joey Spathis, rocking with us behind the controls. Big news bomb from Charania of The Athletic. Earlier today, developing story, NBA teams are probing the availability of Bulls two-time All-Star Zach LaVine, and there is increased openness from both sides about exploring a trade, according to sources. There it is. We've been wondering how much longer the Bulls' brain trust would be willing to give this core a chance. And obviously context, we still might have some waiting to do. Just because this news dropped today doesn't mean we're going to see a Zach LaVine trade happen tomorrow. Lots to get into with who they might be looking to trade with, what they might be looking to trade for, what, if anything, has changed from previous Zach LaVine trade rumors. Mark, I'll just start with you, man. What's your initial reaction to this news that we got today?
In some senses surprised, but then in other senses not. Like in some respects, it's not news. I guess the news element to all this is the fact that Zach himself may be open to some changes, but the fact that the Bulls have Zach LaVine in rumors or teams are inquiring about Zach, the Bulls are taking calls on Zach, those sorts of things. Like these are the things we've heard last offseason. These are the things we've heard last deadline. So it's kind of been almost 12 months of Zach LaVine being connected in some trade rumor in some shape or fashion. So in some respects, it's not news at all. But I guess the component that is the fact that Zach himself may be amenable to this whole thing, which is the piece that I think we should be gravitating towards. But I think that the point you made up the top that we'll probably have to wait a little bit is probably the key thing to take away from all this. I know we're all excited at the moment, but I don't think anything's imminent, at least for the time being.
Mark, let me take it one step further. I think this was a trade request from Zach LaVine. I do not think this is an openness thing. This is a trade request. The Bulls have been shopping Zach forever. And now both sides are open. No, the Bulls have been open. Now there's a side. The other side of it is an openness. Zach LaVine is requesting to be traded, and I think that's a big deal. We've heard a lot of smoke about it from guys like Jake Fisher, and not to like call anybody out for not being reputable. That's not what I mean to do at all. I think that's like been the beginning of the smoke. But the fact that we're hearing this from Shams today, I think this is a trade request from Clutch Sports, from Rich Paul, and from Zach LaVine.
Yeah, I completely agree. With you, Will. Because over the years, like you said, since he's been here, it's always been talk about trading Zach LaVine. It's always been talk. And he has continually said he's never requested a trade. He said that multiple times over the years. I've never asked for a trade. I never went to him and asked for a trade. So for his name to pop up like this now and say, hey, they're mutually agreeing to a trade means the other 50% of it is with it. Because obviously the Bulls are with it over the years. They've been trying to trade him for a minute. So that's a big deal. That's a huge deal. Like Zach LaVine saying, I want to be traded. And I'm okay with this. Like, this has not been a thing that's been open. Even last year when there was a lot of smoke, because that's when the smoke started getting a little bit bigger, was last year. Like the talks of him being traded to the Lakers, the talks of him being traded to the Knicks. Like it was getting a little bit bigger, but you never heard anything from Zach LaVine. It would always just kind of come out and you would know that the front office was making these calls. But the fact that it's happening now and the fact that it's happening this early in the season let you know that Zach LaVine is definitely involved with this, man. So even if you don't want to be like us and believe Zach was part of the trade request, the fact that they're saying both sides are with it should let you know that, yeah, some talk was said from both of these sides that this is okay to happen. And so that's, for me, is exciting. Like I love the chaos. Like I'm here for it. I'm here for all the madness of this. And I'm ready for it to begin. Yeah, I love this stuff, Will. Like this is what I like. I love the chaos of all of it. And I agree with Mark K. I don't think it's something that's going to be going down soon or something that's going to be immediate. teams are still kind of feeling themselves out, around the league, seeing what they really want to keep, who they really want to be. So I think once they figure that out, and plus some of these players can't even be moved until December or January. So it's just going to be time, but the fact that this being put out right now by both these sides lets you know it's time. It's time, guys, for real.
Yeah, there's a difference between like other teams looking around to see if they can get Zach, which is I think what happened last year at the deadline with the Knicks. There's a difference between the Bulls being the one initiating the calls, which is I think what happened this summer, seeing if anybody was going to be interested. And now, like you said, we're at the point where I think everybody agrees it's time to move forward. And we've been talking about it forever, but like the fact that this is coming from Shams, the fact that it's coming from both the organization and the player, this is, I think, the end of it. It's not, I don't think it's going to be a situation where there's like talks and, we're not really sure if anything happens. I agree with you. It's not going to be immediately, probably not for another month, maybe 2, but I do think this is now going to happen.
We got our fellow Bulls fans chiming in the chat. Ryan Fraley saying, "Gottlieb stirring the pot" with that suggestion that this could have been more of a trade request from Zach and Clutch Sports than a newly agreed upon approach between Zach and the Bulls. Amin88 said, "Let's keep in mind Zach has been patient with this Bulls organization for over 5 years and has been through some horrible coaching. Is he tired? Shit, I would be too." Meanwhile, Michael just saying, "I request that Zach play better basketball." And that leads me to, I think, my biggest frustration with this. While I am excited that this might finally be signaling this Bulls front office acknowledging that what we have, what they built, isn't working and is broken and needs to be changed and changed aggressively, it's that, and I think I saw somebody else in the comments earlier making a joke about, buy high, sell low. That's where I am chiefly concerned right now. When you think about what Zach LaVine's trade value might be, when you think about trades of other recent all-star caliber players, and the fact that now everybody around the league knows that the Bulls want to get rid of Zach, and Zach wants to be rid of the Bulls, which does not help his trade value. It does not give the Bulls leverage. It takes away any leverage that they may have had in this scenario, compared to if they had acknowledged the writing on the wall at the trade deadline last season or this past offseason, where Zach was coming off of a year where, he started slow, but he was putting up all-star numbers on great Zach LaVine type efficiency offensively from the back end of, the back half of last season. Now, the Bulls look like a mess. He's frustrated. The Bulls are frustrated with their 4-7 start, and Zach is shooting like abhorrently bad numbers, like totally uncharacteristic, whatever flaws that you want to levy at Zach LaVine for the player that he is. And I think we all kind of agree on what those are at this point, Bulls fans who pay attention. Now I'm like, oh God, if they weren't happy with the offers they were getting for Zach when floating it around over the past year or so, those offers are going to be lower now. That's what I'm frustrated about.
I don't know if I completely agree with that.
I think that's completely fair and reasonable.
Oh, we have differing viewpoints here.
Go ahead, Mark.
I was just gonna echo what Matt said, that is the absolute lowest point. But you have a differing view, it seemed like. So I'm interested to hear it.
I mean, it's because I'm thinking of just stars around the league and what they kind of get back, no matter how they look or how they play. All it kind of takes is just one GM to believe in that player. That's what it's always been. So I look at guys, I'll think about Ben Simmons, and then I think about James Harden, and then I think about Russell Westbrook, who was kind of, at the end, and I shouldn't say at the end because he still played well when he went to Washington, but he didn't get robbed. They didn't get robbed, when they traded him. And they didn't get robbed when they traded James Harden. And anytime Harden was traded, I don't think anybody was robbed. And I don't think Ben Simmons' trade was an actual robbery or anything like that. It just depends on what that GM feels about Zach LaVine. Now, Matt's right from like looking at it, like it would logically make sense that your offers would be lower if I'm looking at you now compared to what you were doing, what Zach was doing, post All-Star break. Like, he was absolutely incredibly balling. And so, yeah, it would seem like your offers will be high going into that season. And then now you're like, well, I don't know. The offers might be low because of how you're playing. I don't think that's the case, honestly. I just think players that's just kind of how it is sometimes. You know, guys just feel like they just need a fresh start. Like, we hear that about players all the time. Like, yeah, but I just think he needs a fresh start. In any sport, I'm saying. He just needs a fresh start. He just needs to start over. You know, he still has some things left in him. And I think I would buy it more if Zach LaVine was on like the other side of 30. Then I'd be like, okay, yeah, maybe that's the case. But Zach is kind of still in his prime. So him getting off to a slow start, you know, still doesn't for me signal that teams are going to be trying to lowball the Bulls. I'm not saying it's going to be like that for all teams, but I still think it's going to be a GM out there that really believes in Zach LaVine and what he could kind of do for his team. And I'm thinking of teams like the New York Knicks. I think they'll still give up a lot, you know, to get a guy like Zach LaVine, no matter how he started out.
I'm not convinced of that. And the reason I say that is I think like a team like the Knicks or whomever still has their picks, maybe a team like the Heat as an example, I would look, we'll see. But I think they would be wanting to hold out for something a little bit more than Zach. Now, maybe the whole Embiid thing isn't really a possibility, it seems like right now, given the way the Sixers are playing. Even they've found themselves a star in Maxey there. Embiid seems extremely happy, so maybe the Knicks' plans of going after Embiid isn't really something that's material anymore. Similarly, with the Minnesota Timberwolves being good and Cat fitting in there and that thing humming along, maybe Cat isn't an option from a trade standpoint. So that, I guess, leads credence to what you're saying, Dave, that maybe some of these teams that were maybe in the race for some of these other players, obviously Giannis signed an extension not too long ago. So maybe these other pieces coming off the board increases or brings that value back up for Zach. But I do still, I think we're all right. I guess is my point. Like, I think you can still get a decent return for Zach, but I also agree that you're selling him out as probably the lowest point possible from, you know, his own value standpoint. And I don't know if you have a tremendous amount of leverage here. You're kind of hoping that the rest of the league views him favorably and that they're willing to, you know, trade their guys for him, trade their picks for him. But I guess that's just hope at this stage, and I certainly am hoping the same. I'm not expecting the same, but I'm hoping that's the case. But yeah, I guess you could certainly make that argument. But my natural mindset with this, as soon as I heard it, was okay, cool. You should have probably done this 6 months ago. You're selling him out at the lowest point, assuming you do sell him at all. And I guess that's another thing that we need to suggest here, that the Bulls have asked a lot for Zach in the past. Are they prepared to move on that? Because I would assume that they will need to move on that, given that teams didn't want to move for Zach previously for whatever the Bulls were asking for at the time. Are they more willing to do so now? Maybe, but I think the Bulls will need to sort of lower their price as well. So it's an interesting one. There's a lot of dynamics at play, but I still think this is probably the wrong time to be doing it, but not doing it as well is probably the wrong decision as well.
Yeah,
sorry, Will, I just wanted to throw a comment from Football CF Candy in there talking about how the bidding war aspect might be underrated in this. If we're worried about the Bulls selling low on Zach, if there are many playoff-bound teams who already are confident in the fact that they are playoff-bound, 10, 12 games into the season, maybe that can get some sort of bidding war going, and we end up with a higher value for Zach than we're currently fearing. And on that note, also worth pointing out from Shams' report that many of the NBA's 30 GMs are in Chicago this week for the annual Champions Classic, the major opening night of the college basketball season. This is where conversations could begin, suggested Shams. So maybe even as early as now, if we might not get the actual trade for another month or more, teams are going to start to feel out what will it take for us to add Zach LaVine to our playoff-bound team.
And I actually think this is potentially a really good time to trade him. I agree, Mark, that they should have done this last summer. They should have done it at the trade deadline before that. And frankly, they should have done it at the 2021 trade deadline when they instead traded for Vooch. They could have traded Zach LaVine, first-time All-Star at age 26, who had 2 years left at $18 million on his contract. What they should have done is traded him then and continued their rebuild around Lowry and Pat and Kobe and Wendell and whoever they would have drafted in the top 5 of that class, and then a bunch of future picks. That really would have been the time to do it. But the issue is they wanted to take a shortcut, and I have a lot more to say about that later. But I do want to just say that I think people are really down on Zach's value right now. And I think a lot of that is fair. He has not played well. He's owed a lot of money. He is not a star defensive player. And I think a lot of teams see through that. But he also has a reputation of being an elite scorer. That is true. I'm not too worried about the offensive side of the ball. It's more, is he going to buy into whatever team system that he goes to? But I think doing this now or even closer to the deadline actually could really benefit the Bulls. And the reason I say that is because teams are going to kind of know who they are at that point more so than they did in this past summer. So yeah, maybe the Sixers are out, and I'm not actually going to rule them out because Zach's super close with Embiid. He's super close with Maxey. They all train with the same guy. Maxey and Zach are both New Balance guys. I think there's a lot of reasons why those players can make the push, and maybe that forces Daryl Morey's hand a little bit. But you have teams that are young and up and coming, like the Pacers, who are starting 6-4, like the Orlando Magic, who are 5-4 right now, like the OKC Thunder, who are 6-4 and in a fight for home playoff position. Those teams could at some point decide they're ready to take a step forward, and they're not like glamour market teams. They're not going to be able to go out and get all-star players in free agency. So if you want a guy who's an all-star player who's locked into 4 more years, you're going to have to do that in the trade market. So I could see teams like that going after him. I could see teams like the Kings, who started off a little bit slowly. Same thing, small market team. They have cap space, but they're not going to be able to use it in free agency. Go trade for a star player who's locked in for 4 more years. You're always going to have the Lakers and the Heat and the Knicks and those players who are always looking for that next star. I think there's actually going to be a handful of teams that closer to the deadline do have a lot of interest in Zach. And I think the Daryl Morey, James Harden saga also gives me a lot of hope here too. There was one bidder for James Harden. It was the Clippers. Daryl Morey just held firm and said, I want 2 picks and I want to swap and I want, the assets to be able to go out and get the next guy because you don't have that guy for me. And even though there was only one suitor, he got what he wanted. And I think if the Bulls play it the same way, they can get enough to where if they do the right thing, and I say that very meaningfully, they have to do the right thing here. But if they do, I think they can set themselves up well.
Let's take our first break there, and then we can pick this conversation back up on the other side. Still lots more to break down about potential teams the Bulls could get the best packages from, and what this means as far as whether or not the snowball rolls, and the Bulls sees trading Zach as step 1 to trading several other people, or if this is going to be a retool. While we share these words from our friends and sponsors on this emergency episode of CHGO Bulls, and we thank you all for joining us. Do us one more quick favor, hit that thumbs up button if you're watching along with us live on YouTube. We greatly appreciate it. Helps us out a lot. Make sure you are also, of course, subscribed to CHGO Sports YouTube channel so you can get alerts anytime we do things like go live for an emergency episode. Big Dave, tell the fine people out there in Bulls Nation about the great deals and products at Midtown Athletic Club.
Well, it's about getting your body right and getting it tight. I mean, look at guys like Mark K and Will the Go Gottlieb. All right. Those guys, take care of themselves.
I'm getting my body right.
Tight.
I'm drinking a 4:50 p.m. beer, baby. Come on.
Again. Let me speak to the people who do stuff. let me talk to them. My man Mark K. Mark K keeps it chick as he has children. That's how he keeps it right. Running around, chasing around, see Red Ted, keeps it together. Will the Go Gottlieb, we know he gets up at 2 a.m., 3 a.m. in the morning and goes on an 80-mile run and keeps himself right and together. That's how the qual stays correct, because the wind flows through it like that. But if you can't do these things, if you don't have these kids, if you can't get up that early, what you need to do is hit up the Midtown Athletic Club and get your workout in that way. They have several locations for you. They have one in Palatine in the northwest suburbs, Bannockburn in the North Shore, Willowbrook in the southwest suburbs, and the Midtown Athletic Club and Hotel in the middle of Bucktown and Lincoln Park. It is Matt Peck's sister approved. And the Midtown Palatine has launched its multi-million-dollar transformation of the club, which will be complete in early 2024, just in time for your New Year's resolutions to get yourself in shape. So you can enjoy so many things, man. They got anything that you need for any kind of person that you are. Single people, families with kids, people looking to make lifestyle changes, and holistic wellness. We know Matt Peck is all about that. So so many opportunities and so many programs that they have, because it isn't just gym quality. They have wonderful boutiques that are boutique quality. All right. Amazing outdoor and indoor pools and the hot tubs, the super luxe locker rooms with the wet and dry saunas and the premium amenities. They got group exercises. They got cross training, spin and cycling. They got boxing. They got yoga, and they got high intensity interval training. Anything you like to do, they got you covered. And Carm always talks about the tennis courts at the Midtown Athletic Club, how much he loves playing there. They got the outdoor and indoor tennis courts, y'all. All right. These are also used for pickleball and paddle tennis. So it's professional quality all the way, because it's the Midtown Athletic Club, and we wouldn't have it no other way for y'all. Head over to midtown.com/CHGO. Find out more and tour the Midtown Athletic Club nearest you. Midtown Athletic Club. Sweat it out.
Today's CHGO Bulls also brought to you by our friends at Empire Today. With Empire Today, you get shop at home convenience, the right product for your needs, quick and professional installation, and a low price guarantee. Empire is the best place to get new flooring, so of course they're going to have copycats amongst their competitors, but those copycats can't beat Empire on quality, they can't beat them on service, they can't beat them on speed, so all they do is advertise low prices of low quality products that Empire wouldn't put in their own floors in their own homes, and they certainly wouldn't put them in yours. Anyone who does is just ripping you off. That's all it is. Empire keeps shopping for floors simple with a curated product selection. Their philosophy is to help you find what you need rather than overwhelming you with thousands of unnecessary choices and substitutes. What they leave out of their selection is just as important as what they put into it. Their product team exhaustively combs through thousands of product samples each year to find the perfect styles that then they actually offer to their clients. They also have a very wonderful and useful, easy-to-use feature called the Virtual Floor Designer, which is a great way to see how different types of new flooring would look in any space in your home. It's easy. Just snap a picture, and then you can instantly see how different floors look in different rooms throughout your home. You can see how it works with different lighting in your home, different decor, so you can see what the floors look like to get the floors that you want. They also pride themselves on convenient shop-at-home service. They help customers shop for floors where they use their floors so they can see exactly what those floors are going to look like, helping you make that informed decision. They also service their own warranties. No calling third-party manufacturers. Empire will take care of it if there's an issue. Schedule a free in-home estimate today. All listeners can receive a $350 discount. We're coming up on the holidays, y'all. Everybody's looking for savings. How about $350 off on the new flooring that you've been thinking about putting in your home? Make sure you use that promo code CHGO. Restrictions apply. See empiretoday.com/CHGO for details. 588-2300. Dave.
Empire
Today. All right, y'all. Moving along. We can loop back to potential deals, potential teams in a minute, but I did see a comment from our guy Jamal from Bulls Central, who shout out, I believe, just touched down in Chicago earlier this afternoon. He's going to the game tomorrow night. Hopefully we'll get a chance to see him on either Wednesday or Friday for these Bulls Magic games. But he was asking to get our thoughts on this part of Shams' report that while the Bulls and Zach have now come to an agreement on, hey, let's look for some potential, new landing spots, the Bulls are still interested in keeping DeMar DeRozan, which I find unsettling. We've heard that there have been talks between DeMar and the Bulls leading up to the start of this season on a potential extension. Seems like nothing, came really close. Shams doubled down in this latest report today that they're still significantly apart on said possible extension negotiations, which obviously begs the question. If the Bulls do find a trade partner for DeMar and they feel good about the return of that trade, why focus on keeping DeMar around on a new deal or even keeping DeMar through the rest of this season? And the same question can be, of course, then posed about Vooch, who just signed a new deal, about Caruso, who still has the back half of this season and one more year on a very team-friendly deal for a first-team all-defense caliber player. That is, I think, another big concern among certain Bulls fans right now is, okay, if they trade Zach, step one. But it can't only be step one, yay, we fixed it, and then continue, trotting DeMar and Vooch out there, right? I assume I'm not the only one who feels like that can't be the only part of this plan to fix this.
I mean, yeah, that would be bad. But again, am I expecting that to be the case or not the case? No, I'm not. I'm expecting DeMar to be here post whatever this thing is. And the funny thing is, if we go back however long, remember when everyone used to pretend that AK was super stealth and we never knew anything he was doing, or we had no idea what the Bulls were thinking, all this stuff? They've been very, very clear as to what they're trying to do. And they've been telling us very clearly as to who they're trying to be, what they're trying to be, who they do like, who they don't like, all those sorts of things, what their aspirations are. And their aspirations right now as a ball club is to be a team that gets back to the postseason, not necessarily the best team in the East, maybe not even the fifth best team in the East, but a team that can get, slot in at 7th or 8th and do the thing that way and consistently show up from that point of view. They've also told us that they really love DeMar. They love what he brings more generally on and off the court, and that they would like to bring him back. So there's absolutely no reason why any of us should feel that Zach is just the first domino and that Alex Caruso would be moved, that Vooch is going to be moved, that DeMar's going to be moved, that the rebuild is coming. Whilst I would love to see it being blown up, I don't think that's going to happen. I know I predicted that in our preseason column type thing, but based on everything they've said, that we shouldn't be expecting this. So I think this is just the start of us being continuously maddened by this organization, by management. I'll happily be wrong on this. If they do something completely different, I will be very surprised, but we shouldn't be expecting that, and we should be expecting, quote unquote, the worst in this scenario.
And I think you can even take a step back and look at it from the perspective of what are they going to look for in return for Zach? And is that going to be something that's future oriented, or is that going to be something that's win now oriented? And I cannot stress to you enough, to everybody that's listening, to AK, to Jerry Reinsdorf, that would be a massive mistake, a massive detrimental mistake that would set this franchise back at least 5 to 10 years. If they continue to try to win with this group, you remove one of your best players and bring in some role players, on decent contracts, and maybe get one protected future pick, that would be a disaster, because you're not setting yourself up for the future, and you're not going to be better for it in the present. They need to prioritize next year. They need to prioritize the next 5 or 10 years. And the only way to do that is by getting young players and draft picks, by moving on from DeMar, by moving on from Caruso, by seeing what you can get for Vooch, if anything, and putting these players, one, in better situations so that they have a better chance to win, and 2, set yourself up for future success. If they continue to try to get the 8th seed, that's what they will be doing. They will be running on that hamster wheel for years to come. They have a chance here, the way that they had a chance when they traded Jimmy, to set themselves up. They didn't do it well the first time. I think we can all agree. But I cannot stress enough how this will just turn into the same, mediocrity begets mediocrity. It will just be the same, more of the same, unless they actually do the right thing and set themselves up well and not take any shortcuts. And I'm not saying that they're not going to do that, but to Mark's point, I'm not confident that they are going to do that. And so I just want to make my stance very clear that they need to rebuild. They need to tear it down. They need to get everything they can. And the priority right now should be draft picks and giving everything you have into Patrick Williams to see if he is worth keeping around past this year. Let him fail, let him run around, whatever, let him earn his contract. The priority has to be young players and draft picks. If they continue on with a 35-year-old DeMar and a 34-year-old Vooch next year, they are just, again, delaying the inevitable, completely missing the point, and setting themselves up for, a 10th pick every single year in the draft from this year moving forward.
For me, and I think you all are correct. I think you're all absolutely right. But for me, it doesn't matter completely what the front office wants to do with DeMar. It matters what DeMar wants to do. Because especially from the things I'm reading from Shams, that DeMar wants to see where the team is going before committing to a new contract. So if DeMar doesn't want to be here, guess what? He won't be here. He's out. So they really don't have a say-so after this year in what happens with him. It's on him if he wants to be here or not. They have a say-so now during the year, while he's still on the contract, as far as trading him, which I think they should do, which I think they should definitely do, and get what they can for him. But if they're talking about keeping him, that's a nice sentiment. But the other side of that is, does DeMar want to stay here and continue to deal with it? Maybe DeMar wants something different for his career. Maybe he wants to go back home to LA, whether the Clippers or the Lakers, and do something different. Maybe he wants to go to Toronto and do something there different. He has options, and the Bulls are not his only option right now. He can make that decision for himself. So I think that's why I'm not as worried about it, because I don't think DeMar is going to want to stay after the season is over. I just think he's going to want something different for himself. And different means, going back home, like I mentioned, or going to another team and seeing a new challenge. But I don't think it's going to be here with the Chicago Bulls. So the front office can want him all he wants to, but DeMar is the one who can make that decision, because he's the one that has to put pen to paper, and sign on that dotted line. But that's why I feel like he's kind of in that position where I think, you should move him kind of right now and get an asset for DeMar DeRozan, because I don't feel in my gut that he's going to sign a contract and come back to the Chicago Bulls and keep doing things, when it comes to mediocrity, because he's long in the tooth. And when guys that are his kind of level of great, they usually want to, finish their career on a winning note, not on a rebuilding note, not on a retooling note, but somewhere that's going to put them close to getting a championship and something on their resume. So, yeah, I think that's how I look at it, and why I don't have that real sense of fear or concern, because I don't think he's going to sign.
Shout out to just Terran7 in the comments agreed with you, Dave, about the fact that it's up to DeMar if he actually wants to stick around if they trade Zach away, and this is looking more and more like a retooling project. It's going to be hard to convince DeMar to sign a new contract in that regard. But I think most Bulls fans would agree that it's in the team's best interest, our fans' best interest, if you don't sign DeMar to a new contract, because it would be more of the same. So if that's the case, Will, then doesn't it make the most sense to, even if it's not much, trading DeMar before this season's trade deadline to get something for him, as opposed to getting nothing for him when he leaves as a free agent next summer?
1,000%. And frankly, I'd rather lose him for nothing than reinvest in him beyond this year, because again, it just sets you up to be a mediocre to a low-end mediocre team. And here's what I'll say to you, Dave, is like, I think what the Bulls should do is learn from the way that they handled the Vooch situation last year. I don't think Vooch wanted to be a part of a losing team. I don't think any of these guys who are super competitive and good players want to be part of a losing team. But when the best any team is going to offer you is the $12 million mid-level exception, and you come with $18.5 million, it's hard to say no to that. And I think the sentiment for players around the league right now is take the money and then ask for the trade. So if a team is going to overpay you by, 33%, then you take that and you hope to get traded. The problem is these guys aren't tradable for positive value on their current contracts right now. Everybody's tradable at, if you attach the right assets and dump them onto a team with space. But if the Bulls give DeMar, the detail from the story was that the Bulls and DeMar are not seeing eye to eye on years and dollars. So if you're clearing out a ton of salary by shipping away Zach, what does that allow you to do? It allows you to clear out a lot of money to give to DeMar. And if they do that and sign DeMar for 3 or 4 years at $25 or $30 million into his age 37 season, that contract is not tradable. And now you're stuck with an age 34, 35, 36, 37-year-old DeMar and an age 33, 34, 35-year-old Vooch for the next 3-4 years. What does that do? That puts you in the same, if not a worse position as you are now. And that's why I say, like, there is a sunk cost fallacy with this, where they should have, Mark and I think Matt, Dave, I think it's taken you a little bit longer to get on board with the teardown, but we've been saying, like, they need to do this. And the longer they wait to do it, the more bad decisions they're going to make in the meantime. And I think if they're now stuck with Vooch, like, Vooch is not going to be tradable. I think he's playing well. Maybe at some point in the next 2 years, a team, on an expiring deal might take a shot at him, but that's still 2 years of, development and draft picks out the door that you can't use. And I just think if they do that same thing with DeMar, it's going to be an absolute nightmare, because DeMar is going to say, you're going to pay me $30 million when the next best team is going to offer me 13. Fantastic. I'll ask for that. And then I'll ask for a trade. And, there's maybe the Lakers are always going to be that team that's out there for him. But as it stands right now, if you trade DeMar, that team will have his bird rights, meaning they can sign him above the cap. So a trade for, Hachimura and D'Angelo Russell, it's not going to be great. And it puts you in a weird spot with players and years in the short term, but maybe you pick up an extra pick with it, and it prevents you from re-signing this guy and setting yourself back that way. So I think you're right that DeMar will want to be in a winning situation. He's been with the Spurs and they've been pretty bad. He's been with the Bulls and they've been pretty bad. Maybe he does want to win, but I think there's still a way for him to do that and also get the money, and that, or at least he can convince himself that he can. But I think the money will always be the primary thing. And I think that's what the Bulls need to they need to prevent themselves from making more dumb decisions.
Yeah.
See, on that Lakers point, I was going to bring that up as an example as to why maybe losing DeMar in the offseason isn't as bad as what maybe some people think it is. I would rather let DeMar walk than trading him just to trade him. But in trading him to make the money work, you take on guys that you don't necessarily love, you're not thrilled about, and they have years owing left on their deals. Like D'Angelo Russell. There's probably very few players I would hate to see more than D'Angelo Russell in Chicago. But the fact that he has 1 year remaining on his deal would be very nauseating. Rui Hachimura, I'm not a Rui guy. He's got 2 more years owing after this year. So cool. If you can trade DeMar for some stuff to say you got stuff back for DeMar, okay, great. But if it means taking on salary beyond this season for guys that you're not really in love with, I don't love that idea as well. And maybe you do it because the Lakers send you back a first or a few seconds or whatever it is, and that's the prize.
Cash considerations? Did somebody say?
We all need some more cash in our life, so that would be ideal too. But I guess all I'm saying is, depending on what type of deal you can get for DeMar, we shouldn't just assume that losing him for nothing in the offseason is the worst case scenario, because I think there's arguments for it being that it actually could be more favorable depending on what is actually out there.
I agree with that.
Yeah, and I think I saw our friend Eco being in the comments earlier when you were making the beginning of that point, Will, saying, well, Will, where was this take about, maybe it is in the team's best interest to just let DeMar walk for nothing, when we were having the Zach LaVine new contract conversation 2 summers ago. I think those are not comparable things, because Zach at that point was still an all-star rising into his prime and showed that he was worthy of a max contract. Signing a 34 going on 35-year-old DeMar DeRozan to yet another new multi-year deal where he's making upwards of $25 million annually, and instead of that, choosing to let him walk and take the entire team in a new direction is not the same thing as being on board with signing Zach to that contract, when it didn't seem like letting Zach walk was a smarter option than that.
Yeah. And look, I mean, I think there's a lot of difference of opinion right now as far as what direction the Bulls are going to take. Casey Johnson tweeted about an hour ago, for those advocating full rebuild, this regime inherited a rebuild and cashed out on it in 2.5 years ago. They've said multiple times to the public that it desires to make the playoffs. The stand supported by all offseason moves and the Nashville training camp will take a lot more than a 4-7 start to change that. So I think there is this sentiment that's the Bulls are going to continue to try to win. And again, I wrote it. I cannot stress it enough. I think that would be an absolute disaster. Whether it happens or not, like, my opinion is that would be the worst thing that you can do. Like Mark said, I think it'd be
try to win like 4-7 and 12th place in the East is trying to win.
Yeah, and maybe they're just so bad anyway that it doesn't matter and they kind of tank unintentionally. But like I said this last night, I think what they will try to do is, considering the fact that they have a top 10 protected pick going to the Spurs in 2025, I think what they will try to do is get stuff back for Zach that keeps them competitive this year, try to be competitive again next year, get off that pick. Maybe it's like the 13th or 15th or 17th pick in the draft. then all their picks are their own. They have complete flexibility moving forward, and then you can start, safely going towards the bottom without the risk of losing valuable picks. My feeling on it is you just can't worry about what other teams are going to do. You have to do what's best for yourself, and what's best for yourself right now, as it was this past summer, as it was last trade deadline, and frankly, the summer before that, is to go full rebuild. And they have an opportunity to get stuff for an expiring DeMar, who's still very good and can be helpful to the right team. They have an opportunity to trade Alex Caruso, who's making $9.5 million this year and next. You get 2 playoff runs with a first-team all-defensive player making almost nothing. That's a super valuable asset. And if you can get anything for Vooch, you do it. Like I said before, the priority is young players and picks and seeing if Patrick Williams is worth keeping around. The only way to do that is to see if he's actually good. And the only way to do that is to let him have the space to do that.
According to some people here, Will, it doesn't matter if DeMar is on the floor or not when it comes to Patrick Williams and his development.
Yeah, I think give him some room. I think that's fine. But look, the developing role player skills are different than developing on-ball skills. I think that's kind of a thing we can all agree on. And Patrick has not been good at the role player stuff. Maybe he could be good at the on the ball stuff. Who knows? But the point is, you need to find out. And I think that has to be the priority right now, is just moving forward with this team, because even their best players, Zach, DeMar, Vooch, their best days are behind them. It's you got to move forward now. You got to see if there's anything on your roster that's worth keeping around, because if not, then you got to collect picks and young players and move forward from there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. As Mike Armentrout said to Walter White, no more half measures. This cannot be a half measure move if they trade Zach LaVine. They can't.
Gotta go on in. Yeah. Agreed.
Full measures. Let's take a second break. We'll come back and continue talking about this, maybe dive into some potential trade partners that the Bulls might be talking to when it comes to Zach LaVine. Thank you again for hanging out with us. We got 370-something Bulls fans hanging out live with us on this emergency episode. Appreciate y'all. Not even 100 likes yet. Let's get the likes up. Come on, y'all.
Come on.
You can do that and multitask while listening to these words from our friends and sponsors. The next of whom is Big Dave.
Marquet, could you do me a favor and just please tell me what time is it?
Game time. Oops.
There is no Dana, only Zool.
No, kids, don't be worried. It's all right. Don't be concerned. It's okay. It's all right. Don't be concerned. It's all right, man. You shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all your sports, music, comedy, and theater nearest you with those killer deals. All-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after it starts. It is not the place, it is the place to find last-minute seats. Find exclusive flash deals and sponsored deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and much, much more. And with the zone deals, you pick the section and Game Time does the selecting and get yourself an average savings of 18%. And Game Time guarantee means you'll always, and I mean always, get the best price. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code CHGO for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem that code CHGO, get your pretty little self $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed, because Will the Go Gottlieb in your deepest voice. What time is it, sir?
Game time.
Well done. Well done. Today's CHGO Bulls also brought to you by Ray Chevy. It's Black Friday savings time, y'all, at Ray Chevrolet in Fox Lake. As one of the top best-selling Chevy dealers in the Midwest, you'll always be able to shop one of Chicagoland's largest Chevy inventories. And all month long, you can save big at Ray Chevy during their Black Friday sales event, where you can choose from over 100 Silverados in stock, the perfect tailgating vehicle. But that's not all. Get 0% financing with $0 down and 0 payments until 2024. Plus, I know everyone loves the word free. That's what you'll get this month at Ray Chevrolet in Fox Lake, a free oil change. All you need to do is mention CHGO when scheduling your oil change. It's a Black Friday offer you don't want to miss, but you have to schedule it by November 30th. Also, they have confidence with that Ray price promise that you will get the best deal possible. It's a guarantee that the price you see online is the price you pay when you go into the dealership and say, I would like that car or truck, please. In many cases, other dealerships and other dealers will raise that price that is listed online when you come in and say, hey, I want that car or I want that truck, because they'll say, oh, it's fine print offering and it's only specific to people who have 12 toes or people who are Olympic gold medalists or something else. I got 10 toes and I'm not a gold medalist. So what, you're telling me I can't get that price? That's not fair. I want the price listed. That will never happen to you at Ray Chevy. In fact, Ray does everything possible to find additional savings for you when you walk in and say, hey, I want that car or truck. So you may end up paying even less than the price you see on their website, but you'll never pay more, and that is the Ray price promise. Visit Ray Chevrolet in Fox Lake or raychevrolet.com to get your Black Friday savings and that free oil change. They've been serving the community since 1963. Find new roads. All right, y'all. Let's talk about some potential trade machine-y kind of stuff, because that's fun, and we might have a month to wait before this trade happens because, as we mentioned, there are several players around the league who are just now starting new deals they signed this summer who can't be traded until December 15th. Some of them can't even be traded till January, and teams who are willing to offer up said players will have to wait to make the Bulls those official offers. I did see somebody in our comments talking about the New York Knicks, which seems like a reasonable place to start, given that some of the more substantial rumors and maybe even reporting around previous Zach LaVine and whether or not the Bulls are trading him came about the Bulls and the Knicks talking over the past year or so. And obviously something to keep in mind for all of these, and I think, Mark, I saw you talking about it on Twitter earlier today, is that when it comes to whether or not you're talking about taking Knicks contracts back or any team's contracts back, the Bulls are flirting on the luxury tax line. So if you're talking about sending out contracts and taking back contracts mid-season trade-wise, you have to keep that in mind. Do we still see a viable trade, though, if the Knicks are looking to shake things up? It looks like, maybe Julius Randle is already done with Tom Thibodeau. We were wondering if that would be an issue this season. Randle seems to be frustrated. Knicks off to an up-and-down start. But there was a trade out there that involved maybe Quickly or maybe one of the other young guys and maybe some draft capital. Do you still see that as a possibility, Will?
I don't think I ever really felt like the Knicks were going to be that great of a partner. There's something about that situation that just doesn't feel like there's the whole CAA versus clutch thing. I think that's a piece of it. I think the Knicks are pretty well set on the perimeter, and I'm not really sure like how a Tom Thibodeau team would defend with Jalen Brunson and LaVine back there. I guess it's not like that out of the question, but I don't see them as being like a primary suitor. And I also heard that those talks were like not as serious as it really seemed. It was kind of like a Knicks checked in about Zach's availability. Bulls said he's going to cost you a lot. Knicks said, all right, talk to you guys later.
Fair enough. I think it's a little bit harder to do now as well. Like previously you had Derrick Rose's potential opt-in number of 14 million, which could have been included for salary reasons. You had Evan Fournier. You had a few other guys that were on the Knicks last season where it made it a little bit more palatable for them maybe to move out the guys that they didn't necessarily want. Whereas now to make the money work, you probably need to include either RJ Barrett or Julius Randle along with Fournier. And none of that really excites me, to be fair. So even if the Knicks wanted Zach, I don't know if I want anything really from the Knicks anyway. So I don't think the Knicks are really a suitable option. And to be fair, like they're winning basketball games right now with their current group. They've kept things as is. Like I said before, they've been aiming for something probably a little bit bigger than Zach anyway. So I don't see the Knicks as a realistic alternative here or an option. I'm going to throw one out to you guys. I've been playing around with the trade machine as we've been speaking. Mm-hmm. Now, full caveat, I'm not saying I would want this deal to happen. I'm not saying it's a good deal. But if we go back to what we were talking about before in terms of the Bulls telling us who they are, the type of deal they would want to make, let's continue the theme of heading to New York. All I'm saying here is Royce O'Neal, Dorian Finney-Smith, and Spencer Dinwiddie, and one or two of these Phoenix Suns first round picks from the future lines up with Zach LaVine and Dalen Terry. So you get to have your cake and eat it too, in the sense that you get your picks, but you get to stay relevant. You get to buy into a whole bunch of 30-year-olds who can help keep this thing afloat for the time being. So that to me is the type of deal I think the Bulls will be chasing, assuming they're even prepared to move off for Zach LaVine, getting in 2 or 3 decent role guys, and if possible, some future first-round picks. And if they have to settle for 1 pick, I think they will.
Para Junior Sports in the comments said role player jackpot.
But I agree. That's probably what is along the lines of what they're going to be looking for, because as I said, they've still got a pick going out, and I think they're going to try to be competitive at least through like Vooch's contract. It would not surprise me if that was the goal, to get DeMar to sign a 1+1 or a 2-year deal and really compete for this year and the next 2. And like I said, I mean, I don't think that's going to be the case. If you remove one of the best players on the team and you bring back some decent role players, I don't see how that makes you better. So that's why I feel like picks need to be a priority. The other issue, I think, with the trade machiners, I guess I'll say, the all the suggestions that we're seeing on Twitter, it's like you only have 15 roster spots, and there's not going to be, like, Zach's making a lot of money, and a lot of teams don't have big dollar guys that can, just swap you 1 for 1. The Bulls have 1 open roster spot. They can take back a 3 for 2 or a 2 for 1, but you have to also be considering the fact that the Bulls have to keep their roster under 15. I believe Terry Taylor is non-guaranteed, so maybe you cut him, and that opens up a little bit more flexibility. But these like 7-8 for 1 trades are it's not possible.
Well, I'll throw this one out at you that I was reading in Sports Illustrated about an hour ago when all this news kind of dropped. They threw out a hypothetical for the Knicks. Obviously Zach LaVine, but it trends RJ Barrett, Evan Fournier, their 2024 first round pick, and their 2027 first round pick for Zach LaVine.
That's like the exact modern version of the Jimmy Butler trade. It's like a young guy who's like got a big name, but like isn't actually that good. And not to say he can't get good. Zach obviously turned himself into a very, very good player. But that just kind of feels like the same package. And again, I think that just comes back to the fact that it's going to depend on, one, what is AK's line in the sand? How much does he want in terms of productive players now? And how much does he want in terms of draft picks? It's hard to get both. There are teams like the Nets who have collected a bunch of role players and also have a bunch of other picks. And they're a great trade partner because you're not necessarily just betting on their downfall. You're betting on the Suns in 2028 and 2030. You're betting on like the Rockets long-term. I mean, these teams have enough diversity of draft picks to where that actually could be really exciting. Same with the Sixers. They just got a bunch of the Clippers picks. So I could see teams like that being interested. I could also see teams like Orlando coming in with like Fultz and Jonathan Isaac to match salary and a pick or 2. That would be, I'm not a big Jonathan Isaac guy, but like, I think Fultz could be a player to build around. That's another kind of package that I feel like the Bulls have been looking for a point guard. They can get a guy in there that can push the tempo, that can run up and down, that can defend. The Magic can add some scoring and shooting to their team, which desperately needs it. And they still have the, defensive infrastructure around him to where that makes sense. So, Indiana, maybe Buddy Hield has requested a trade. They've got a couple of bigger salary guys like Bruce Brown. I don't know if they'd want to move him, but that money works. Or you could do like Daniel Tice and a couple of smaller contracts. Again, it's going to be, I think, one of these teams that's a small market team that isn't going to be a free agent destination. That's the kind of team that's going to be willing to absorb him into their cap space. Or it's going to be, a team that's up against the tax like the Lakers, a glamour market like them, where they got to, free up some space by doing this via trade, and they're willing to add a pick. The problem is they only have one pick to trade, and it's 2029.
Mm-hmm. So
sticking in New York before we can move to another East team we haven't touched on yet. Mark, I couldn't help but notice when you were rattling off a potential Nets deal, Royce, DFS, there was, there was no mention of either Cam in that trade. And I think it's because you're smart enough to know that, and I've seen a lot of Bulls fans being like, can we get Cam Johnson? Can we get Cam Thomas if Brooklyn wants Zach? I don't see them putting either of those guys in the trade for Zach LaVine, which sounds crazy, might sound crazy to some Bulls fans, but, I just don't see it. Also, shout out to our buddy Bulldog over at NBC Sports Chicago. He was texting with me, Big David Sabine, earlier today, like, maybe like Cam and Ben Simmons for and giving Zach and DeMar. I'm sorry. Everything that we've gone through with Lonzo over the last 2 years, if you try to send Ben Simmons my way as a Bulls fan, I am smacking you upside the head. No. We just got another injury update about nerve damage or nerve problems with Ben Simmons today. Anyone throwing Ben Simmons in a trade machine that has him coming and putting on a Bulls uniform, no, God damn it, no. Stop.
That's the PG version of what he said, guys. That's the nice version of what he said. All right.
Yeah, I could imagine that being the case. But I think that's an interesting point. But and just to ram home some other things, we're all going to be playing with the trade machine for the next however long. But let's just keep in mind that certain guys like a Cam Johnson or whomever it may be potentially can't be moved until December 15 or Jan 15, depending on the type of deal they signed, the type of free agent they were. And there's some other things that can or can't be moved at this time of year, depending on, the type of transaction those things have been involved with in the past. So this is only just the beginning, I guess, is the point. There's probably going to be a ton more fake trades that you'll be seeing online. There's probably going to be a ton of fake trades that we'll be cooking up on this podcast. I know the GOAT is probably in a frenzy right now, cooking up like 50 odd different trades. I can imagine that he's doing that. So
Charlie Day Miller.
He went full John Wick. He went full John Wick on Twitter today.
Yeah, I'm thinking I'm back.
So that's the point. This is only the start. It's going to get interesting, and some of this is going to be very fun to do. But let's see how it all plays out. But the key piece, Dave, what was that New York trade that you floated before? It was Barrett and Fournier for Zach.
Yeah, Evan Fournier, RJ Barrett, the 2024 first rounder, and the 2027 first rounder.
Okay, I can tell you categorically now why that's not going to happen. That puts the Bulls into the tax. So that's the other caveat that I wanted to close this podcast with. In fake trades, make sure you're not including guys until they're eligible to be traded. And two, make sure the trades that you're putting forth keep the Bulls out of the tax, because that's the mandate, folks. So we need to operate under those conditions.
He's right. They've stated they're not going in unless they're winning, and this is not a situation of winning. So they are not going to that tax at all. He is correct.
Gentlemen, let's touch on the team that has also been floated around, because they had a trade package that they were putting together that they kept saying to Portland, don't you want this? Don't you want this? Don't you want this for Dame? Portland kept saying no. Dame found his way to Milwaukee on a deal that the Blazers saw to be a better deal. Now people are saying, well, what if the Heat put together the same or similar package that they had ready to send to Portland for Damian Lillard, and instead just use it to go get themselves Zach LaVine to pair with Jimmy and Bam? Any thoughts on whether or not that is feasible for the Bulls, and if it's something that you would like to see happen? Y'all know how I feel about Tyler Hero. I don't want that crap. But what about you guys?
Is it feasible first?
The Heat. Yeah. I'm not to make Matthew mad, but if I'm the Heat, I say no to that trade. Like, I can get 80% of Zach LaVine with Tyler Hero. and I have to include picks, and I have to make the salary work with Duncan Robinson, another good shooter, who I need to space the floor around Jimmy and Bam. Nah, I'm not doing that if I'm the Heat. Sorry to say.
I completely agree. Completely.
I also see it as unlikely from the Heat side. Like, that's why I said, like, not just the same trade package, but maybe something similar. But yeah. Go ahead, Will.
Yeah. So I agree. I don't see the Heat having any interest in Zach right now. But I think the Bulls could package Zach with Alex Caruso, and that could really juice the return that they get. And here's why. Teams, as good as Alex Caruso is, he's going to be worth the Bulls probably aren't going to trade him for less than like a pick and a good young prospect, or like 2 picks, because that's the production that he gives you, the impact that he has on winning basketball games. But I think a lot of these teams in the NBA right now are hoarding picks to go after big stars, right? They want to save. The Knicks are saving their 6 or 7 draft picks and a bunch of salary filler for Embiid or Karl Towns. They're not waiting around for Alex Caruso to come, supply effort and energy and defense to their backcourt. So if you attach Caruso to Zach, I think that gets you a lot more. Teams are going to be really interested in Zach. I could see a team like Philadelphia, for example, being much more interested in a Zach plus Caruso package when they really need somebody that does what Caruso does and also does what Zach does. But now you're getting Caruso, and he can help cover up some of the stuff that Zach doesn't do. I could see that being a lot more interesting. Could the Bulls get more for Alex, if they traded him separately? Maybe. But again, I just don't know that a lot of these teams are going to be willing to give up what the Bulls want for just one role player. And, we've seen trades like this where the Grizzlies went after Marcus Smart and they traded 2 picks to get him. So maybe that's something that's potentially going to be available. But I think that would be a way to move Zach, where you're potentially getting off of a lot of salary long-term. And if it's like Tobias Harris and like Paul Reed and Jaden Springer and those Clippers picks for Zach and Caruso, that gives Philly what they want in Caruso. It gives them the all-star caliber player that they want in Zach LaVine. And it clears out a ton of cap room and gives you some picks and young players. I think that could be a good trade, but I've also heard that Philly is not all that interested. But that kind of deal, I think, does make a lot of sense and opens up some new avenues, some new suitors for Zach if you attach him to Caruso.
James, Andy in the comments saying still overvaluing AC, LOL. Meanwhile, Joel Hernandez saying, the Caruso's trade value all-time high right now. Our guy, where was he? I think our guy. Oh, yeah. Booms. There he is, Barton. Saying, do you watch when the Bulls are on the defensive end, James? The whole league knows how valuable AC is. I don't think it's hyperbolic to suggest that the Bulls could have themselves a bidding war for Alex Caruso's services if they decide to trade him before this season's deadline. He is a reigning all-defensive first-team player who is playing lights out. We know he's dealing with a little bit of a toe right now. I think I saw an update earlier today, Will, and you can confirm that he was upgraded from doubtful to questionable on the team's latest injury report for their game tomorrow. We know that comes with the territory for Caruso. He is also coming off of a career high number of games played last season, and we've already touched on the insanely team-friendly deal that is not just the remainder of this year, but an additional season in 24-25. So I don't think there is anything that you can say is overvaluing Caruso, when comparatively we know that the Bulls have a tendency as an organization to overvalue some of their players when they're looking at them in potential trade packages. We got to take one more quick break, and then we can come back, unless if you guys are all cool to stick around for like another shorter segment. I know we're going long, but I mean it's an emergency pod about a trade Zach LaVine report, and there are a couple teams out west that I see people in the comments talking about that we haven't touched on yet. So let's take a last quick break and then come back and do that. Today's show.
If people hit the like first.
Yeah, hit that like button.
415 in here, only 117 likes. Come on, guys.
Let's go. Okay, good to know. We will wrap up by 6, but we can go a little bit longer. Today's show brought to you by our friends at FOCO. Chicago sports fans, it's football season, tailgating season, still going strong. That means you need to get fitted out with the best Bears gear and all other gear available at FOCO.com. They've got hoodies, for that nice, beautiful fall Chicago weather. They've got shoes, they've got signs, bobbleheads, everything in between. They've even got Aloha shirts, straw hats, polos, bags, everything you need for game day, for a tailgate, for hanging out at the bar with your buddies, and holiday season. Everybody's looking for gifts for their family members, friends and family. You can find perfect gifts for those people in your life who are sports fans just like you at FOCO.com. Check out FOCO.com or click the link in the description below. For all non-presale items, use the promo code CHGO and you will get 10% off your order at checkout. Again, that's FOCO.com, promo code CHGO for 10% off.
So when you're looking good, you might as well have a delicious beer to go with it to reward yourself on buying something that makes you look even more awesome. And the beer you should be drinking is the Goose Island Beer Company, y'all. They are supported by CHGO, and we support them as well. It is Chicago's beer since the Jordan year 1988. The Beer Hug family, 312 Wheat Ale, the Full Pocket Pilsner, which we drank all of, and is none of in our office because we ran through it, and it was delicious. But they also have the Oktoberfest beer, y'all. So in any month, even November or December, you can still enjoy some Oktoberfest beer. So grab that ultra fresh exclusive beer at the Goose Island Original Brew House on Clybourne Avenue in Lincoln Park, or from their tap room on Fulton Street in West Town. It's the Goose Island Beer Company. It is Chicago's beer, the true taste of Chicago.
All right, y'all, moving west. I've seen several people in the comments talking about the Oklahoma City Thunder. Will, you mentioned them earlier as a young team that's on the rise and maybe suddenly more ready to be playoff competitive than maybe they or others anticipated, looking to add a win-now star caliber player. I saw several people asking about our guy, Mark K, and whether or not you could maybe form some sort of coalition of Aussie people to get them to convince us, to convince the Thunder to give us Josh Giddey. Mark K is on the phone with his people right now. That's an interesting one. I love Josh Giddey. I love his potential as like an NBA do-it-all kind of player. He's already showed that to us in a lot of examples, many nights. Some people think that he could end up being an odd man out of sorts for this young Thunder squad that has just talent on talent on talent, especially now with the introduction of Chet Holmgren after his red-shirted rookie year. What do you guys think about potentially trying to get a deal done with OKC for Zach LaVine? Mark, let's start with you.
Well, I mean, importantly, Josh Giddey is only 21 for everyone. So
hey,
that's important to note. He is
youth
very
matters, young. Mark.
Younger than Patrick Williams even. So he's very young. So, yeah, look, he'd be interesting. Certainly doesn't help your shooting woes. But in terms of playmaking, he's arguably one of the best passers in basketball already. I won't have to worry about him rebounding the basketball like maybe some other players on this team. He's a fantastic rebounder as well. So let's see. Sam Presti has continued to say that they're not prepared or they're not willing to maybe take that step or make that move or to skip steps, so to speak. So I don't think OKC kind of makes sense on that front. They do need more shooting. Do they need Zach LaVine as such? I don't see the fit, to be honest with you. I like the idea of adding Giddey to my team for completely biased reasons. And I'm not sure if they're prepared to give up on Giddey just yet, nor do I think Zach LaVine makes sense in Oklahoma City. And I don't even know if Zach would want to go to OKC. So that one to me doesn't make a lot of sense, even if there's reasons for why I'd like to see it.
Yeah, I like Giddey, but I'm kind of with you, Mark. Like, if we're going to do this, like, let's not do the whole thing where we like get a bunch of guys who can't shoot and like put them together and see if you can like make offense work. I really like Giddey, and if you build the right team around him, I think he could be really good. But it's this whole question of like, if you're going to have the ball in your hands 30% of the time, you need to be really good. You need to be so good that your team can win even if you have major flaws in your game. And I think that's kind of the problem we're running into with DeRozan. I think Giddey would be like probably too good of a prospect for the Bulls to get for LaVine. So I don't see that happening anyway. But I think just in terms of, strategy of team building, those are the questions that AK should be asking himself when he's wondering what he can get back for LaVine. But like I said, I don't see OKC putting him in a deal. I feel like Giddey, Shea, J-Dub, Zach, Chet would be like the lineup he'd be after. And that's only if he's like, if the Thunder are like really grooving and like looking like a contender closer to the deadline. I could see something more like we're talking salary filler of like Lou Dort and Bertans, and then maybe you get a prospect in Case and Wallace and a couple of picks. I think that's more reasonable from OKC side, and I really like Case, and I think he'd be
isn't he like great second place in the NBA in shooting right now?
Yeah, I mean, he's not going to shoot like 65% on threes for the rest of his career, so you're going to see it that dip. But I think that's kind of closer to the caliber of prospect you're looking at, as opposed to Giddey, who's like, one of the shinier young toys in the league.
Yeah, that part right there, Will, is when I think about this stuff, like I don't see them getting those kind of guys. Like I see bits and pieces, I see tools, I see role players, I see picks. Like I don't see you getting something that's already proven. Like Giddey is proven, and it's just about, I guess, his role right now in OKC. How he fits and how he's going to fit going forward with them. I don't see them giving up on that to get a Zach LaVine, because I don't see that pushing them forward, getting Zach LaVine on their team. I see them still kind of being the same kind of team, maybe battling for a little more something, but I wouldn't do it. I don't see the upside for it for OKC. I definitely see the upside for it, for the Chicago Bulls. I definitely see that upside for sure. So for those selfish reasons, absolutely, I would make that deal. But I don't see OKC letting go of Giddey like that for LaVine, a.k.a. what they call it, Timothy Chalamet.
Who was last weekend's host on SNL, and I still don't know who that guy is and why he's famous. So that's fun. Not to mention whoever the musical guest was. It's like, who the hell is this? The other Western Conference team that's had an interesting start to their season, another disgruntled star. I don't know if y'all caught Zion's most recent post-game interview when he was talking about just trying to buy in, and looked very much like a guy who is not bought in, and maybe Zion's ready for a change of scenery. And not to suggest that like something simple as Zach LaVine for Zion swap with other pieces attached to both could be done and done simply. I know our guy Jamal was asking about it in the comments earlier. I don't see Zach as a fit in New Orleans, really, with the pieces that they have over there. I don't know if you guys agree with that, or see if there's any sort of potential deal that could be made for New Orleans. I mean, BI is basically a different, LaVine-esque kind of player, but honestly playing better than Zach right now.
Well, you also got to remember who might be in the ear of the guys in New Orleans, and it might be your boy, Matt, might be in the ear, of trying to get Zach LaVine down there in New Orleans on that team.
Sorry, never refer to him as my boy ever again.
Excuse me, my friend, my people.
There you go, your friend Gar.
Yes, my guy, right there. But yeah, selfishly, I would do that. I love Zion. I'm a huge Zion fan. Of course, it's about his health. The man has played an equivalent of a season and a half in 5 years. So that's not cool. So that's an issue. But he's awesome. Like, I would love a guy like Zion Williamson on the team. I don't know how high or how low his value is right now, but if that's something they can make happen, that's something I would take a risk on. But that's just me.
I would not. Well, firstly, is Mariah Mills in this deal or not? But maybe that swings the deal. But
she's in every deal wherever Zion goes. She's in the deal.
Well, maybe that changes my mind. But I think more generally, no, I'm not in favor of this. One, because of the whole injury stuff, but I just don't like the vibes from Zion right now. I mean, this guy just doesn't seem very committed to playing basketball at his complete potential. I'm not sure how serious he is about being a professional. And
fair.
I don't know, like, fair enough. Like, the ideal version of Zion, maybe I could get behind that. But obviously, if the Pelicans were receiving the ideal version of Zion, then he wouldn't potentially be on the trade table. He might not even be on the trade table more generally. So I don't love it for a number of different reasons. I'm not an Ingram guy either. And at that point, like, why would you be trading Zach for Ingram? Like, assuming DeMar would remain, like, that fit between DeMar and Ingram would be terrible. And Ingram and Zach are similarly tiered players anyway. So if we're trying to rebuild this thing, which I'm not convinced the Bulls would be, but assuming we as fans would want them to be, trading for someone like Ingram isn't a rebuilding type move. So I don't see the Pelicans being a logical destination.
Yeah, they've got CJ McCollum under contract for like 3 more years, I think. and he's been injury prone and also has like a collapsed lung, I believe, right now. So obviously speedy recovery to him, but they've got too many big contracts to where like one thing, for example, I think the Bulls should be willing to do, and I know you already said it, that they're not, Mark, and I agree. They're not going to go in the tax, but I think one thing that could be good is if they do go into the tax just for this year, take on additional money this year, go into the tax to be able to get off of longer term money. I think that's a strategy that they should be interested in employing, because I think that would maximize what kind of return you can get. Like I said, I think also attaching Caruso could maximize the return. But I think the Pelicans are in just like a really weird spot right now with their roster, and I do think they're going to make trades. I'm a big Zion guy, but I just the vibes are not there right now. I'd feel not great about that.
A lot of our fellow Bulls fans in the comments getting their jokes off about Zion and the potential problem that could arise with Chicago food. Alex saying Zion and Chicago food. Demond Ice saying Zion and Chicago chicken wings. Ryan saying Zion would live at Harold's Chicken. OBJ Yashad saying Zion would eat one deep dish and be sidelined for 30 games.
Y'all are cold-blooded.
Michael saying, just tell Zion to put extra hot peppers on the beef. He'll be fine. Oh, my goodness. Hey, man, I eat like that, and I'm fine. But also, people aren't expecting me to go out and perform for getting paid tens of millions of dollars as an NBA superstar. So there is that. All right, real quick.
You went out and performed, Matt.
Hey, man, I perform in this box, stuffing my face with chicken wings and deep dish pizza and Italian beef sandwiches. It's a little different. Quickly, and I know, Mark, you touched on it at the beginning, saying you weren't a fan of this Lakers trade package that people have thrown out there. There was one that was going around Bulls Twitter the other day, even before the Zach LaVine news broke, and it was actually about Alex Caruso, I think, or was it about? No, it was about Zach. It was about Zach. But the fact that the Lakers cupboard is pretty bare. D'Angelo Russell, Rui, Will and or Dave. Is there a situation where you see Zach going to the Lakers to be a complimentary, helpful piece for LeBron and AD, where you like what you're getting back from LA?
No, not for me. I don't see it. Unless it's another team involved with the trade and I'm getting extra capital from them, like more draft picks and things like that. Yeah, but D'Angelo Russell, I mean, no. Hachimura, I mean, no. Like, I don't see it. But if they had more picks, more of those things, Austin Reeves, you could probably talk me into taking and getting a guy like him. I don't know how high they are on him since, they benched him, but he just had a good game though against Portland.
I was going to say, had a really strong game off the bench the other night. Right after Mark got off a mean tweet about him, I noticed.
But that was also
Reeves when clearly following Mark.
That was also when LeBron was sitting down too. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
I don't know if that I don't know, but I could probably be talked into that. But those other guys, it just feels like those are the wrong kind of role guys I would kind of want on this team. If you're going to be retooling like that. But yeah, if they have more draft capital, then we can sit down and have that conversation for sure. But until then, I don't like the players.
Yeah, and like we saw with the Harden trade, the Clippers went out and got additional draft capital by trading a future swap for or a future pick for their swap back. So I could see the Lakers doing something like that. But to me, it's like I don't want to take on more bad contracts, more bad players, frankly,
right.
Just to get off of mine. Like that's not the point with this trade. And obviously, as we talked about, like AK might not see it that way, but to me, it's like if Reeves and at least a pick, probably 2 picks aren't coming back. Like I don't feel great about that, and they just don't have those picks. So maybe you're able to flip Hachimura to another team for a pick, or there's going to be ways that teams can get creative here to acquire additional capital. But to me, it all just comes down to what it is that AK wants, what it is that Jerry's allowing him to do, and where is his line in the sand as far as what is the bare minimum return that he's going to get. I think it's kind of hard to find Zach LaVine trade partners, but I also think that teams will kind of reveal themselves over the coming weeks and we might not see anything immediately, but I do think there will be teams out there that will be willing to give stuff up for him, and it's just a matter of, is it the right stuff? Are we going the right direction with this?
All right, we will put a pin in it right there for now. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for this emergency episode of the CHGO Bulls podcast on a big news day. Zach LaVine and the Bulls open to exploring trades. We are back tomorrow for pre- and post-game bookending Bulls vs. Magic Part 1, 7 p.m. tip-off Chicago time, 6:30 pregame. We'll see you there. Will, you will be at the UC reporting from said location. There you go. Follow Will on Twitter for all of his updates from the game, Will_Gottlieb. Make sure you've read his latest on allchgo.com, including a riveting article about how the Bulls can't make layups. So that's fun. Follow our guy Mark at MK Hoops. Big Dave is at BAWL Sports on Bulls_Peck. Shout out and appreciation to our friend and producer, Mr. Joseph Spathis, behind the controls. We are CHGO_Bulls. We will talk to you tomorrow, 6:30 Chicago time pregame. Hit that thumbs up on your way out if you haven't done so yet. Make sure you subscribe to CHGO Sports YouTube channel. Trade season, y'all. See you, be good.
We all silly like the mayor.